So as Laura said, my name is Gayle Mann from Misadventures in Entrepreneuring. I have been floating around a lot of your PR events of late, delivering things. I am not a PR practitioner or a PR professional, but having done a lot of work with Laura and a number of other people in the communications industry, I know a bit about what you do and what you're trying to achieve. My background is very much entrepreneuring, startup growth and scale businesses, and working with entrepreneurial leaders on their mindset and being more entrepreneurial. I'm a self-confessed entrepreneurial behaviour geek, and I love nothing more than to observe how people behave and why they behave the way that they behave, and then coach them to work to behave differently and in a way that's more helpful and more effective for them in their business. If you've never met me before, my background, my previous 8 years were in running as the director of Entrepreneurial Spark, which is the world's largest fully funded entrepreneurial accelerator, where we worked with over 4,000 entrepreneurial leaders on their mindset and the behaviour as the key ingredient to their success. So it does work. What we do, our methodology, we don't write business plans, we don't do financial forecasts. It's purely around how are you behaving and how are you showing up in your business. So today, I'm really excited to talk to you about empowering you and your teams to be more entrepreneurial, why it's important now, why it's important all the time, and what might be standing in the way of you doing that. So today, there we go. What we're going to talk about today over the next 30 to 40 minutes is what does it mean to be more entrepreneurial, and how can you empower yourself and your team to do it, because ultimately it has to start with you. But to get a little bit of engagement going to begin with, I am going to ask you a question. And I'm going to ask you all to access your chat function, and I would like you to tell me the answer to this question. On a scale of 1 to 7, how engaged do you plan on being in this webinar? Are you a 1? You're off video, you're emailing, you're texting, you're 1 ear in, 1 ear doing something else, or to 7, you're on video, you're giving me positive faces, you're engaging, you're asking questions, you're taking notes. Laura is a 7. Who dares to tell me? Laura's always a 7. Excellent. Ruth is a 5, off video but taking notes. I love it. Anyone else? Oh, 6s. Nice. Wilma / Rena is a 6. 5. Anyone else dare to tell me the truth? Cool. Ooh, listening intently, Lee. Love it. I'm prepared to ask questions. I like it. Great. Any last minute numbers coming in? We'll push on. Why did I ask you that question? It's not for my own ego and my own self-esteem, and it's not to understand if, I am going to be the centre of your world for the next 30 minutes. But what I really wanted to do there was break the autopilot. How many webinars have you been on when someone's asked you how engaged you're going to be? How intentionally engaged that you're going to be in something that's about to happen, in something that could be really important to you? And how often do you consciously break autopilot on your own behaviour? Because what we're talking about here today is to be more entrepreneurial requires you to think a little bit differently, and for you to consciously and intentionally think a little bit differently, and then to encourage your teams to do the same. So breaking your autopilot is a really important part of the gig of being more entrepreneurial. So I just wanted to do something a little bit different. Oh, there's someone waiting to get in, and now I am the host, so I have to admit them. Excuse me for 1 second. Okay, done. All right, so why do we need to be more entrepreneurial? What is the importance of it? Now, other than to dig ourselves out of a COVID hole that we're in at the moment, here's a stat that might surprise you. Over the last 15 years, 52% of Fortune 500 companies have disappeared, and the average life expectancy is 15 years, as opposed to previously when it was 75 years. The world is changing. We know that the world is changing, but here's real evidence of how companies that have been around for our lifetime and our parents' lifetime have now gone, just disappeared, because they couldn't keep up. They couldn't keep up with change. And they couldn't keep up with change because they were working to traditional methods and traditional ways. They weren't thinking ahead, and they weren't riding the wave of change, which, as we know, is getting exponentially quicker year on year. And it takes for you to think slightly differently and act slightly differently in order to catch up and to keep up. We're all in the business of solving world problems. And at the moment, it's never been more relevant. The businesses that we're working in and the businesses that are our clients are here to positively affect society and create positive change. But that means we have to think differently to the way that we created those problems in order to solve them. And that's where being an entrepreneur comes in. Whoa, I want to go back there. So since you're all on chat and most of you are engaged and off video, I wanted to ask you a question because quite often there are some beliefs around what being an entrepreneur is that we can't translate into our day-to-day life as a business. So I'd like to ask you, if you were to think about an entrepreneur, perhaps someone that you know who's very entrepreneurial, how would you describe them? What are the skills that they have? And what do they, how do they show up most days? If anyone wants to shout it out, then go for it. But if you want to drop some stuff in the chat box and give me a couple of ideas of what you believe an entrepreneur might look like. So innovative, positive, yeah. Creative, definitely. Oh, positive, two positive ones there as well. Risk takers, that is a very, very common one. Lateral thinker, inventor and innovator. And enthusiastic, organised. Oh God. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not sure I fit into the organised category. Open to opportunity, 100%. Oh, infectious energy. I love that. I love that. Adaptable to change. Thinking about solutions to problems identified. Risk takers, creative. Disruptors. Brilliant. It's just as well I predicted most of those things. So here are some of the most common ones that I hear the majority of people talking about, and you nailed lots of them there. Spotting opportunities, innovative, problem solving, creative, risk takers, thriving on change. How many of you would, and again, just on the chat, let me know with a yes or a no, how many of you would say that this is you, that you could tick multiple of these boxes? Laura, very quick. And well, a second question while you're typing, if it isn't you, who wants it to be you? Who wants to be more creative? Thrive on change? Oh. Ticked a couple, but of course, sure, everybody wants to be more entrepreneurial. Yeah, got it. Oh yeah, get bogged down on the day-to-day monotony. It's difficult, isn't it, when you have to work in the business and do the stuff and you don't get the what you think is the perceived space to be able to go and be more entrepreneurial. Okay, stuck in a corporate world, like to be a bit more risk taker. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for engaging with me. So, just to give you a little bit of insight, the World Economic Forum holds a Future of Jobs Summit every year. And every year they assess what the most critical top 10 skills in every business need to be. And this is just a summary of some of the changes from 2015. And if you look at our 2020 critical top 10 skills, you'll see that the top three are the top three that you all suggested, the top three that we've talked about. And whilst complex problem solving is still at the top, it remains at the top. The others are pushing up the ladder. Risk taking is not a top 10 skill, but having sound judgment and making decisions is, and often that requires a degree of calculated risk. Cognitive flexibility is a fancy way of saying thinking differently and being more adaptable. What is also really interesting about the top 10 is that emotional intelligence has made an entry in there. And emotional intelligence is something that is going to be, it will work its way further and further and further up the rankings in those top 10 skills for each and every one of us in every one of our industries. So I just wanted to give you an idea, give you a sense of, this is not me saying that thinking and acting like an entrepreneur is really important. This is the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs saying, backing this statement up. So it's just as important for me as it is for any of you. To give you an idea of what I work on, this is a roadmap for the mindset of an entrepreneur and the behaviours of an entrepreneur that we created at Entrepreneurial Spark 8 or 9 years ago. And whilst the language is slightly different and not as formal, the majority of those mindsets and behaviours map directly onto those future skills. So those top 10 future skills: making decisions intuitively, waking up ready to communicate, being the ability to reimagine, that cognitive flexibility, self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and being constantly curious. Who's uncomfortable? Who's comfortable with being uncomfortable? So for us, future skills and entrepreneuring are one and the same. So much so that we started a business called 21st Century Skills, which was all about being an entrepreneur in your business. But what is the challenge for us to be more entrepreneurial? Can anyone identify with these statements? You know it's important. You'd like you or your team to behave more that way. You're disappointed when they don't, or you don't, or you can't, but you don't understand why or how. That is most of the people that I meet that are not working for themselves, or it's people that are working for themselves that just don't know how. And what we need to do in order to unlock, because we can all be entrepreneurs, none of this stuff is stuff that is natural to you. You can learn it all. If you were at PR Fest a couple of years ago when I delivered a session, you'll know that I fully believe that whilst we have natural predispositions to certain things, we're not naturals at anything. In order to be great at something, in order to be more creative, or in order to be a better problem solver, you have to work really hard at honing that talent or that skill. And so we have to work hard at creating the right conditions in order for us to be better entrepreneurs. And here is what I believe to be the 3 conditions that we need to create and empower more entrepreneurial behaviour. So, first of all, you have to feel like you're capable. You have to feel like you can do it. and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. You need to feel motivated to do it. And you need to feel like you're allowed. And I've put allowed in inverted commas because we've got some interesting stuff to talk about there. But my suggestion is that we need to either feel one or more, or two or more of those statements: capable, motivated, and allowed. Without that, it's very difficult to either empower or behave more entrepreneurially ourselves. So let's talk capability. So when we talk about capability, what I mean is there's two different types of capability. One is technical capability. Do I have the skills? Do I know how to be a better problem solver? Do I know how to take more calculated risks? Do I have the skills? Have I been trained? Have I learned it somewhere else? And when I'm talking directly to you there, but when we're talking about teams, when you, let's say, for example, who recruits on the basis of entrepreneurial behaviours and skills? I don't know if anyone's built that. Feel free to throw me comments in the chat if you build any of those things into your recruitment process. And if you haven't, has anyone built it into their training and development or their performance management process? Does anyone teach their staff or themselves to be more entrepreneurial and to have those skills and that knowledge that allows you to? And then the second side of that is psychological capability. One of the biggest challenges that the entrepreneurs that I work with is that they can't self-identify as an entrepreneur. It feels like that is something for the domain of, there's this myth around what an entrepreneur, who an entrepreneur can be. And so it's important that you can self-identify by saying, well, I have the capabilities, I have the resilience and the tenacity, I can identify with that persona. So capability has got to be both in skill, but it also has to be in your mindset as well. Second up, motivated. You've got to be motivated. Just like with anything that you do for work, you have to A, want to do it, and B, need to do it. So if you're looking to empower your team to be more entrepreneurial, what is in it for them? It's a really important question to be asking yourself. You have to put yourselves in their shoes and say, well, if I want to empower my team to take more risks, what's the upside for them? What's the benefit of doing that? If I want to empower my team to be more creative, is that going to impact on the job that they do? Is that an aside, or is that built into their role that they do? And the same for yourselves. I mean, do you care? How much do you care that you want to do it? And that's a fairly simple one. And then lastly, and this is the meat on the bones here, particularly in organizations, is, am I allowed? Do I feel empowered? But also, does my environment empower me to be more entrepreneurial? Now, here's where we get into some good discussion. First of all, the environment, the business itself that you work in, or the business that you operate. Are there functions within the business that prevent you or your team from acting more like an entrepreneur, behaving more like an entrepreneur? And if I asked you that, you'd probably think, oh, no, I can't really think of any. But maybe I'll ask you to put some in the chat if there are things that are preventing that. But just to give you an example of where this can occur and you don't even know it. When I ran the Entrepreneurial Accelerators, we partnered with Royal Bank of Scotland and to roll out accelerators all across the UK. And as part of that two-way partnership, we ran something within that corporate called the Entrepreneur Development Academy, which meant that we trained over 2,500 of their team to think and act more like entrepreneurs. And I was training a team of 100 over in Dublin that were in the customer service side of Royal Bank Scotland. And I asked them, who is comfortable with being wrong? And not a single hand went up in the room. And I said, right, okay, well, as an entrepreneur, you need to learn to make mistakes sometimes, and learn that that's okay. So I dug a little bit deeper and I asked them to tell me why. And they said that they have a customer service charter. So their business is customer service, and in their customer service charter, right at the top, in the number one position, is we must be right first time. So they had invested in training 2,500 of their staff, yet, ouch indeed. And they had 100 of them sitting in front of me, taking a day out of the business, asking to be more entrepreneurial. And at the number one of their charter, they couldn't do it. It was baked into their everyday behaviour that they couldn't be wrong. And so that's, talk about a barrier or a blocker to empowering people to be to behave differently. And then we've got processes. So you could call that a process as well. But we recently worked with a law firm who work on billable hours. So they really wanted their team to be coming up with new solutions for customers. As a law firm, you need to be really rethinking how you're working and breaking out of those traditional modes. But they also asked their team to bill 7 hours a day. And where is the space in there to allow your teams to be more creative and think differently and come up with new ideas and solutions when 7 hours of your day is taken up by billing? So I guess my challenge to you is, are there any processes within your business that are preventing your team from thinking and acting in that way? And then lastly is social norms. And this is where I would say culture has a huge part to play in whether or not you or a member of your team can feel empowered enough to actually act on some of these behaviors. And that starts right at the top. So if I was to ask you in your company, is entrepreneurial thinking and acting baked into the DNA of the company? Or do you have any values around it? And if you have values around it, do you live those values? And if you live those values, how do you measure whether you are living those values correctly or not? And that's right in the DNA of the business. And a lot of businesses, entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial. We did a bit of internet research, and like the top 1,000 businesses in the UK, and we scraped from their website, and everyone loves to put how innovative and entrepreneurial we are on our website. But is it in your values? Is it in the DNA of your business, or do you just like to tell people that you're entrepreneurial? And then moving down a level from the top, are the team role modeling that behaviour? So if you're one of our values is innovative, excellently, you can tell me during the discussion how you measure whether or not you're living that value. Are your team, or are you as a line manager, role modeling those behaviours? Is measured as part of your PR? Yes, I love to hear that. You are role modeling it. Lee, how are you role modeling it? Tell me in the chat. But are you walking the walk every day? Are you making space to be creative? Are you giving your team the space to do that as well? I've talked to a number of managers who are, empowering their teams to be more innovative and creative, but they're not actually giving them any length of rope to go ahead and do that. And Laura and I were discussing this earlier, and we're discussing now in this culture and this climate of remote working, we're not sat next to one another. We're not looking over each other's shoulders. The propensity for your employees or your team to be going rogue or going off and doing stuff without you looking over their shoulder is much greater. Do they feel like they can, or do they feel, do you trust them to do that? Do they feel trust? Absolutely. Leadership needs to lead, but you also need the trust. And then lastly, is it normative behavior within your business to behave like this? Or if you're suddenly to say to someone, I want you to behave like that, will they stick out like a sore thumb? Because ultimately the majority of us are creatures of social permissions. Will I look like a weirdo? Will I look like a teacher's pet? Will I how will I what will I look like to my peers? And a willingness to stand out. Social norms is really, really important. So those are some of the conditions and possibly some of the challenges that we face when we are trying to empower our teams to be more entrepreneurial. Some of you have put some great stuff in the chat, and I'm going to try and catch up with it, but I would really like to get a bit of discussion going from each of you on how that manifests itself for you in your business, and if there are any self-imposed blockers in there. I chatted to one line manager the other day that said he has a question and he's written it on a post-it note on his desk that said, am I standing in the way? Or how am I standing in the way of my team being more entrepreneurial today? And it's a question he asks himself daily in order, how can he get out of the way of that? Because he believes it's important to his business. So I'm not sure the best way to do that, but I'm thinking maybe if I stop sharing for a minute and people can come off mute, and we can just have a quick discussion, and then I can throw the slides back up in a second once we've had a bit of chat. I'll do that. Oh, there we go.
Hello.
Hello. So feel free to put stuff in the chat box, or and we can get a bit of discussion going, or feel free to jump on your video or unmute yourself and
I think an interesting point you just made there about that post-it note, that managers can be quick often to blame the blame culture, more junior members of staff for not being productive or for not doing this or not doing that. And sometimes, especially if you're a manager, you assume that people maybe either junior or younger than you have the confidence or the knowledge to be able to do what you're thinking and saying. But actually, if they've not been taught that, or they've not been given the authority or given permission, then obviously it actually is the manager's fault, and that essentially is the manager standing in the way. And I think in PR, when we're quite, well, traditionally we've been very hierarchical in terms of how agencies in particular are structured: junior account manager, senior account manager, junior account director, and that's what motivated people to ask for more salary, when's the next leap up to the next stage, and what band that is, and all the rest of it. And I think that structure has potentially been part of the blocker in there as well, for people to feel like they can put their hand up and come up with the idea. They don't have to be the account director to be able to do it.
Yeah, and it's so common in many industries, is that you recruit on technical skill, you recruit on the ability to do the day job, and what we need to recognise is that the day job is not just the technical skill anymore. The day job is also everybody contributing to keeping the business alive, and keeping the business moving forward. And we laugh quite a lot when we go into larger organizations where you've got the innovation team, and then you've got the innovation director and the innovation manager, and then and it's like, by giving someone the job of innovation is only for the people who have got innovation in their job title. But actually the job of innovation is for everybody to be contributing daily, and that to be facilitated in some way across your organization. Lee, I wish you would, will you come and join the conversation, because you're really good on chat and I want to hear more.
Wait till I figure out how to turn my video on. Hello.
Come and join the chat, Lee. Tell us about how you recruit. What sort of importance do you put on those types of behaviours as well as the technical skill, and then how do you embed that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in-house. I should probably start by saying that. And my company is actually a technology, innovation and research organisation. So innovation and innovative thinking is kind of in our DNA. It's at the heart of what we do, and it's in our culture. Being innovative is one of our values, and we're actually measured against that in our PDRs, which then goes towards our bonus and our salary review and all that kind of thing, which is pretty good. But there's two kinds of innovation, I suppose. There's the technical innovation, which our organisation is good at, and then there's the being innovative in our approaches. So I have a small team, and going back to kind of what Laura was saying, it's a very flat structure. So, you know, I have a director, I'm head of comms, and then everyone underneath me is roughly round about the same, give or take, you know, a few years of experience. And so we are having to constantly adapt as a team to our business, which is constantly changing and evolving and adapting. We have to be innovative. We have to be thinking of new ways to be creative. And so when I'm recruiting, I kind of take it on spec that, you know, the majority of the CVs you can get, people can do the technical things that you need them to do. You know, some are better than others, obviously, but, you know, generally, if you get a decent CV, everybody's got the kind of experience you're looking for. And so actually when I'm interviewing, the first thing I'm looking at is, will they be a good team fit? Will they fit in with the culture of the organisation? And less, so our interviews are less about your technical skills and tell us about a time where you wrote a press release or tell us about a time where you organised a media facility. It's more about, you know, how do you approach certain circumstances, you know, things that we face as an organisation every day. And I think it becomes really, for me anyway, it becomes really clear within the first 5 minutes of an interview whether the person sitting in front of me is going to be a good team fit. Yeah,
absolutely. I would say that's really common. I talked to somebody the other day that said it takes them about 6 weeks to recruit somebody, but as a CEO of the business, he knows within 2.5 minutes if that person is the right cultural fit. I think it's really another one I see, which is a common one, is people recruiting people like them. And I think you can share values, but the way that people take them and run with them in their daily life can be slightly different. So that is it's really good to hear that. There is, I think a lot of companies are scared of the word innovation because they think technical innovation, they think R&D, they think inventing stuff, whereas actually reinventing your processes, practices, moving your business model is just as important. So it's really nice to hear that you've taken that into your...
Yeah, I think as well, I think because of the nature of what we do, because we are kind of technology innovation, we do tend to have a lot of young people. So our you know, our demographic in the business is actually pretty young, and I find that they come with that kind of, you know, they're not as set in the corporate world perhaps as people who've been around for a wee bit longer. And so you do find that they come with these new ideas, these innovative ways of thinking, wanting to do things differently. And so, you know, my team's quite diverse, from people who've been in certainly the PR industry for a while, right down to a brand new graduate who's come in and brought with her you know, a whole new way of doing things. So I think the makeup of the organisation that you find yourself in quite often is really important towards that.
I would say they're probably less tainted by having been punished for making mistakes as well, because that's it's only a fairly recent thing, I would say, where organisations, and particularly if you're not working for yourself, that like it's been okay to make a mistake, and so those that are coming in that are younger are less like they're a little bit more inclined to take a risk like that. So yeah, absolutely. Is there anyone, Emma, you were talking about being an agency and the priority focusing on billable work and just firefighting without entrepreneurial thinking. I'm really interested to hear what you have thought about today, and if it's practically possible for you to implement anything within your organisation, if you're willing to chat to me.
Yeah. I have children in the other room, so just in case they suddenly
don't worry, dogs and children, it's fine.
Yes. I definitely think within the business there is a desire for all of us to be entrepreneurial and to bring business in. Absolutely. I mean, I'm on furlough at the minute, so it is slightly different for me. But yes, I mean, that it goes without saying, and it's absolutely supported in concept, but on a day-to-day on a day-to-day kind of basis, the space isn't there really to like we were talking about, really to be able to focus on that and think differently, because you are constantly trying to get the client work done.
Yeah, and so if you feel uncomfortable, don't worry about the kids. Supported in concept is it makes me want to weep big fat tears, but it's really, really common, and I wonder how many of you are sitting here like thinking the same. Oh yeah, this is lovely and it's supported in concept, but how do you actually bring it to life? And I worked with an organisation recently where we challenged the idea of supported in concept, and we actually created an entrepreneur catalyst program, which meant that we challenged members of the team on the ground, and we taught them how to be more entrepreneurial. And the concept was, that they would rub off on one another, and that would perforate the DNA from the ground up. It was interesting, but it is difficult. Do you manage a team, Emma?
No, I don't. No, I'm part of the agency I work for.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's just about then thinking, well, how can I behave that way? Mm-hmm. And even in my getting the work done, because there's so much scope for doing the client work that you can imprint that on the work as well. That it doesn't necessarily have to be in your management of a team. I'm just looking at some of the other comments coming through.
Katrin's got a really interesting one there, and it is definitely a dilemma from a double whammy, as she puts it. So Katrin, are you able to hop, even just for voice? Oh, there she is.
Hey.
Video when I'm trying to hide my roots, but
we all are.
Yeah, I think it's because we really try and say to people in the agency, come up with new ideas, fresh ways to do things, challenge a brief. So they've kind of got the double approval of, they've got to kind of come to you and sell their idea. And while we might be saying, brilliant, let's just try it, because if it doesn't work, at least we've tested it or something, there are so many clients who are so risk averse, and you can push them to try new things, but then if it doesn't work, it's easy for me to say in my business, if it doesn't work, it's okay because we've encouraged you to do it. But equally, if it doesn't work for the client, then you have to kind of take the hit. So there's probably quite a few clients who you probably wouldn't even push big ideas with. And then I think if that's your kind of day-to-day clients, does it stunt your creativity and trying to think differently?
Does that come back to values then?
Mm.
So that, like, because we talked a lot about like working with clients where your values are aligned. So I mean, fair enough, I probably have more flexibility because I don't have all the, you know, the account teams and all the rest of it to feed. But it is probably more challenging for an agency to say no to a client because the values don't necessarily sit beside each other. But then, is there room for like an education process or something as part of what Gayle was talking about, the environment stuff and the process? There's maybe like a hybrid there of how you can build that into part of your pitch, and part of your education and how you work and how, you know, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Because I think part of an agency's role is, like, you're a consultant, it's your responsibility to take new ideas, new channels, new ways of doing things to clients. I guess that's like quite easy for me to do, but it's maybe harder for, say, more junior staff to do, because they're not only thinking, oh, I've got to get it signed off at like at our level, but then I've got to go and try and convince the client. So I think I don't think it should be a barrier that stops us. I think it's just something that sometimes makes it easier for people to sit back and not think bigger or take the easy option, because it's like two sets of barriers to overcome. So
I think for me now it goes back to the, like, do I feel psychologically capable and am I allowed? And that creating that culture of feeling like you've got permission to be able to do it, and then providing the technical skill to be able to teach the way that you can do it. And I mean, like, risk taking is a bit of a myth in entrepreneuring, that entrepreneurs are risk takers, and it's not that entrepreneurs are necessarily risk takers. The best entrepreneurs take very calculated risks, but the difference is that they're out there spotting opportunities and then calculating the risk and then deciding to do it, whereas a lot of us who are, like, we'd call ourselves not risk takers, are just not, we're not even out there looking for the new opportunities yet. So it's not about, oh, I'm just going to do something wildly reckless with it. It's like, I'm gonna try something new and different, and I'm in an environment that allows me to do that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm interested in Sarah. I don't know if you're willing to come on and chat with us, but you had a wee voice from the dark. As an educator, you found this interesting from an education perspective. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think probably we tend to kind of, if we ask people what skills they want graduates to have, they tend to say that they need to be able to write, got to be good with clients. So we kind of get a mixture of soft skills and some hard writing skills, and usually web development and content skills. They very rarely say entrepreneurial skills, and I'm actually wondering now if any of them have ever said entrepreneurial skills. But it's just occurred to me listening to the conversation today and the challenges that you're all facing, that really this is something that we must have in the curriculum, that and leadership skills. Actually, Laura mentioned something about those earlier. And I just think, these are absolutely fundamental, because we want people to think about how they innovate on behalf of their organisations, but also on behalf of their clients, how they move discussion forward, how they come up with new ideas, and not just kind of PR stunt ideas, but actually, new ideas for challenging business models, for challenging the ways that organisations function. So it's been really refreshing, actually, this discussion this afternoon.
Good. I've just seen your tweet there as well. Thank you. Oh, is Gayle dropped off.
I've bored her to death.
She's dropped off. She disappeared. Sorry about that, everyone. She'll come back in a minute, probably.
Hopefully she will.
Back. No, okay. So I suppose that's 10 to 4 anyway. Thank you everybody for coming. Huge thank you to Gayle, because you know, obviously these things can only take a certain amount of time and capture our brains for a certain amount of time. But from the 2 pages of notes that I've taken, or 3 pages of notes that I've taken, there's certainly further conversations to be had. Oh, there she is.
My internet totally bombed. And it was so interested in what you were saying, Sarah.
I was rounding up for you. And I said thank you very much, because this is a conversation that I've certainly been having with you and with other PR people for years now, but it's not quite caught on yet. And I think that's just because of the whole, like, probably our mindset and how traditionally our mindsets have been against billing hours. It's been quite traditional for agency models. But I think just now, with the way things are, we have so much of an opportunity to change without having too much of a dramatic change, just by purely because of the circumstances we find ourselves in. So firstly, obviously we're, you know, remote working from home in a crisis, thinking differently, more time to think sometimes, less time to think other times. And as I've mentioned a couple of times in the chat box as well, you know, we have a massive diversity and inclusion challenge within our industry, and culturally and values-based stuff, that comes back down to the DNA of our organisations, who we work with, how we work with, who we're recruiting, how we're making them feel part of the journey, and empowering them to, you know, have opinions, stand up and be heard, and all the stuff we've really just talked about. So there probably, again, hasn't been a better time to bring this up in as part of our conversation. I'll certainly be, I think I've got at least 4 different blog ideas out of this. So if you follow my blog, you'll be seeing more of that coming soon. And I'll do some stuff for PRCA's blog as well. But, you know, feel free to drop before Emmy drops off. Put your handles, email addresses, whatever, into your the chat box just now, so you can follow each other. And also, in case you need to follow up with anything with Gayle or anybody else that you want to have a chat with. But it's been a really good session. Lots of food for thought. Again.
Yeah, thanks so much for engaging with me, breaking your autopilot, chatting in the chat, and I think, as I just said in the chat there to Sarah, just as feedback, like, these are often, oh, Sarah gone. Oh,
No, I'm here.
Oh no, you're still here. Yeah, like, you're right when you say you don't think anyone's come and asked for entrepreneurial skills, because we probably don't understand that we need them, and because of this misnomer that entrepreneurs would just run wild and rogue in your business and just try new stuff and break stuff and take risks and make mistakes all over the place, and like, God forbid they went off and launched something new that you hadn't been approved, but they really are, I'm calling them entrepreneurial skills because that's my niche and that's the background that they come from, but they really are essential, just life skills and work skills now that we all need to be practicing, and the key is to practice them. The key is to make them at the, like if you want to improve them, you can improve in any of these skills, but you do have to practice them. And there's tons of stuff that you can do that's out there. And if anyone wants to know what you can do to practice them, or where to start, then feel free just to get in touch with me anytime. I am Misadventures E on Twitter. I know you're all mad for Twitter. So.
Have you got a final question before everyone goes as well?
I do. Well, my final question to you, and I can put it back up on the screen, but that's going to involve a bit of jiggery pokery, so let's not bother with that.
No, don't worry about that.
But my final question to everyone is, what is one thing that you could do right now to either empower yourself or to empower your team to think and act more like an entrepreneur? What is the one thing that you can do? Some of you might already have an idea from the discussion, or you might need to go away and think, oh, enable them to fail, Wilma, love it. Yes, enable, easier said than done. But I'm looking forward to, please come back to me and tell me how successful you were, or how much it gave you the panic moment.
Apologies.
Lee, was that a naked man?
No, it was just figment of your imagination there, Will.
For the eagle-eyed of you.
Oh, taking more time each week to spend working on the business, I like it. 5 minutes at the beginning of each day to be more creatively, I like it.
That'll spark it.
Yeah, that inspired. More time for brainstorming. Creativity skills, Angeline. Brainstorming is great. Sometimes facilitating it with a sort of creative exercise can be a really good way to get you going. So something like design thinking exercise, or a Disney creative exercise, or something like that. Or just sometimes we play like the Mallet's Mallet game, the word association game, just to get the brain going. I don't know if some of you might be too young to remember Mallet's Mallet, but word association game is a great way to do it. Time for thinking. Katrine, I was on one of Laura's PR Fest sessions recently, where we talked about this notion of what is work, and that right now our whole work lives are completely different. And I know that I do some of my best thinking, or the best way to clear my mind is either to go out in the garden and do like 50 burpees, or take my dog for a walk. And are we giving ourselves permission to call that work these days? Is a big question. And does your business give you permission to call that work, when actually it might be some of the most productive stuff that you could do? I
think I would die if I did 50 burpees.
Me too.
But I think what working from home has been good at for people is that sort of understanding that you don't have to be sitting at a desk to be working, and that taking breaks away is good for creativity and stuff. So yeah, definitely. But I think it's just that shutting off the emails and telling everybody to go away, and then taking some time. Yeah.
I think the other thing is maybe taking time to reflect on the successes, however small they are, through the day, or as a team widely, and celebrating those. I know it's hard when we're all disparate from each other, but it's hard to do that in our current circumstances. But celebrating success, and thus encouraging people to be more creative and think about what success looks like, because again, imagining what that's like before you start out is sometimes a good thing to do. Just a little thought.
I mean, the what is success for me question, I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms.
Exactly.
In our business, we've been talking a lot. I interviewed an entrepreneur last week who said to me, life is to be played with. And it really hit home for me, that statement about how am I reflecting that every day? How am I doing that every day? Practicing it? Because it can't all be hard, right? All my screens are frozen, so I know, I think it's me. It's like Fortnite in one room, and God knows what's happening.
Well, thank you very much. If everyone's dropped their details into the chat box, you can follow each other and stuff. But we'll be back in August with a session on leadership, which is exciting. And yeah, we have more. We're thinking about maybe changing up the PRCA Scotland monthly hangouts as well, because they seem to be kind of tailing off. I think everyone's just sort of fed up of just hanging. So we'll just turn them back into the webinars rather than run too much. And also, there are so many PR events on and available, and it's just too much for people to cope with. So let's focus on the quality rather than the quantity. And if you've got any suggestions, obviously, of things that you want to cover off, people that you want to hear from or whatever, then you can email Wilma or me, get in touch on Twitter, however you want to do it. And don't forget, we're on Instagram as well. And yeah, thanks again.